Okay, great. Welcome everybody to this training for student surveys within Highlands. Daryl, I'm going to let you introduce and kind of kick things off to give some context.
Okay, I'm Daryl Layfield. I really appreciate everybody that's on. I'm going to be taking roll, so if you're using an alias, if you don't mind, change it out to the real name. There's a little arrow next to the name, and you can put your real name on there if you want to get counted for as being attended. This is a priority that we took on as a district. We did a good bit of work on deciding which vendor we wanted to go with. I'm happy to have Ryan on board with my student survey. I appreciate what you guys have already done to help me with the pre-rostering of teachers. I'm finishing that up. Later on, you're going to see a slide that talks about how this is used in the evaluation process. The student survey is non-evaluative. We want to give it to the teachers as a formative tool for them to reflect on their teaching. They are getting full credit in the evaluation for 50 points, which is 6% of their overall rating. But everybody's already got that. If you go in and look at the summit over the overall, that 50 points is already applied, and so everybody's got it. So the results from this are not used to make any decisions on highly effective, needs improvement, or ineffective. Also want to let this group know, and whoever listens to the recording, that I'm relying on you to go through this information with your principal and drive the bus at your school, do a presentation at a faculty meeting upcoming pretty quick on what we're doing. There's some slides at the end that are for school use, and just go through the teachers what we're doing this for and how we're going to do it. And if you have any questions on that, just give me a call, and we'll write something. There will be an email coming out about this, but I'm relying on the APs to get this information to the principals and then get it to the teachers on why we're doing it and how we think it's going to help our teachers. So, Ryan, if that's a pretty good enough setup, just let me know if you need something else, and I'll jump in when needed.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Daryl. And to introduce myself, my name is Ryan Balls, and a couple of people are just joining. I work with my student survey. We do student surveys, for districts across the country. I started off as a teacher. I taught in Atlanta. I taught high school physics, biology, and psychology. I've also worked for Baltimore City Schools doing teacher and principal evaluations. So this is definitely having that teacher background is helpful for me in terms of thinking this, and also shapes how we work with you guys as a district. So to get started for today, the main thing we want to talk about is we want to do some background on student surveys in general and also our STEP survey. We're going to preview the teacher feedback reports, give you some logistics and important information about survey administration. We want to give you a little bit of time to kind of put together and think through your plan and ask some questions. And then at the end, there are some school-based presentation slides, and Daryl will be able to provide all of you guys with the slides to today's presentation as well, so you can use them for your own presentations. So a lot of the why, and you guys have worked through and understand a lot of the why piece of it, but ultimately students have the most contact with teachers. They're in their classroom every day. They know the norms of what happens in the classroom. The second piece is that student surveys have that ability to give meaningful and actionable feedback to teachers, and we're going to really try to walk you step by step to see how that process can occur. And finally, there's an engagement and empowering piece for the students that they are part of that education experience. So that's a part of the why. As far as the research, we've seen that student surveys show positive relationship with gains in student achievement. So teachers that score well on surveys also tend to have students that have higher gains in achievement. And even in cases having it being more accurate than predicting achievement than self-ratings or observations or summative ratings. So we've got some accuracy evidence for that accuracy. And then a part that we really care about too is that teachers who engage in these practices that are measured on the survey also have students that report higher levels of engagement and academic self-efficacy or confidence in their subject. So these types of behaviors tend to lend themselves towards those pieces. So the way that we developed our survey is we wanted to start off with construct validity, that just means, are you measuring what you're thinking measuring, which is in the middle there. This is an outline of our validation framework. So to establish that, you get evidence from a bunch of different sources. First one is starting at the top is thinking about content validity. So are you measuring the right things? So these behaviors are not going to surprise you. They're very strongly aligned with the Danielson framework, and we've been able to call some of that out as well in the reports. We then do interviews with teachers, make sure the questions are fair, make sure they apply to a variety of subjects. And then the next piece is we do interviews with students. These make sure that, do you understand what this question means? How often does it happen in your class, and making sure that we have the right understanding of it. And then the final part is the traditional field testing that you've seen with a lot of surveys, which is, we want to establish, does it have a relationship with student achievement, and we have one of the strongest relationships with it. And also conversion, does it align with things like student engagement, observation frameworks, and things like that, so which we see some great evidence for that. So the survey categories, teachers wear a lot of different hats in any classroom. So any given day, you might be asked to present new information, manage a class full of 25 children, and you might need to counsel a student that might be having a bad day, and be an expert in whatever subject you're teaching, all at the same time. So we've divided in these categories to acknowledge this multifaceted role that a teacher plays. And so we're trying to give feedback within each of these 6 categories. The questions, some of the sample survey items are, they're things like, I learned from my mistakes in this class. My teacher shows us examples of student work. When my teacher asks a question, gives us a few seconds to think before calling on students. So some of these they're about the frequency of these behaviors. Right? So our answer choices are always, almost always, often, sometimes, and never. We design that very intentionally to be more objective. So students ask about how often it occurs rather than their subjective opinion about it. And we also do that to have higher levels of reliability as well. One of the things we do have in place, we do know that we have a lot of faith in the surveys and the validity of them, but we also know that kids are kids. And, screening procedures allow us to identify student responses that might be invalid. It's not just somebody who finishes early. It's, we look for a variety of things. We look for students who are racing through it, students who are straight-lining answers, students who are answering the questions very differently than every other student in that same classroom. Those are the pieces that we look for, and we identify and eliminate invalid surveys. So this will alleviate some of that concern for, I gave a lot of homework, this is the kid's going to get back at me for this. That kid is not going to be a part of those survey results. So the teacher feedback reports, I want to change to this and show you a demonstration of what type of reports will come out of this, because ultimately this is the true professional development piece that we want to be able to use these results. So I'm going to log in and show you guys a sample. So this might be what a district might see. I'm going to hear a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to go. Great. I'm going to keep that muted. If you guys need to get in touch with us, or Daryl, if you need to say something, just feel free to use that chat function, and I'll be able to turn that back on. So for instance, if we want to look at a teacher's report, what you're going to see is a couple things. You'll see the 6 categories across the top. You'll see a total score for a teacher in comparison to school and district average. And down here at the bottom, you'll see how a teacher scored in any one of the categories. Now, we can get some more specific information. We go in one of the categories. We can see again how they did in all questions in the presenter category. We can also see information about the specific item. We can see the alignment with the Danielson component, so it's not going to feel like it's something new. And we have teacher average, school average, and district average for that particular item, as well as how all students scored on that survey. Now, one of the features you see here off to the left, this is only available in the principal view of these reports. Teacher report looks all exactly the same except pretty much this one feature. We don't put in the teacher reports for confidentiality. But it allows, one of the jobs of a principal is to be able to connect the dots with other teachers in the building, because your best source of professional development often exists within the building. And so it's a question of being able to connect them with people that are models within the building on specific practices. So we can use something about when teaching us new things, and We can look over and see who did well. Within every single category, we have one item noted as an area of strength, and we have one item noted as an area of focus. And this is what teachers are doing differently than other teachers. Not necessarily just what you got the highest or lowest, but how you really compare in comparison to district average. And we have some information that you can follow up on that here. So the other thing that will come out of this is that we have some next steps documents. So this is an action plan template that people can use to create a plan of attack to say, here's what I want to do for my area of focus in the presenter category. I've been able to work with this model teacher. I've talked to my principal about it, but I can also access our full video library that we have, in which we have every single survey item aligned with sample videos from the teaching channel that go through, and they provide 2 to 3 minute helpful sessions that can allow a teacher to learn some new strategies and try them out and so forth. So that's one of the resources you have available within that report. You can then email it to yourself as well as an administrator, and so you can have a record of that plan. The other piece is that once you've created this plan and you've made some changes to instruction, you want to be able to compare your results. You want to track your results over time. So we have some longitudinal data features that allow you to track that and see if I need to set new goals, see how my progress is, and so forth on every single one of the items. So I'm going to stop now and flip back to the presentation. So some important information about this. Student surveys, as Daryl was mentioning, they're a component of the teacher's evaluation, but the actual scores on the surveys are not included. Teachers receive full credit for having the survey administered. And the reason is the goal is for these surveys to be used formatively. They'll be administered in grades K through 12, and they're administered online in the spring, and the window is May 2nd through May 13th. So your role as a survey coordinator. Primarily the main role is to serve as the point person, as Daryl mentioned, the person on the ground within each building to be able to help with that coordination for it. Also be developing a local survey administration plan. We're going to give you some planning guidance today, but for actually being able to get some details about when to administer the survey and so forth. You'll provide a brief introduction to your school faculty, and we have some information and slides that you can use for that. Distribute proctor instructions. Daryl will manage the distribution process to you guys, and you would manage that, making sure that the right teacher has the instruction, and then assisting teachers in accessing those survey results and afterwards. So, administration guidelines. Also, it's helpful to think, well, who should be taking the survey? And so, does an assistant teacher take the survey? Does a co-teacher take the survey? Those types of situations. So we've got a couple of pieces of guidance that can help you where if they meet 3 criteria. The first one is that they plan instruction, and they deliver instruction, and they assign grades. So if a teacher meets those 3, it's going to make sense to have surveys taken about them in class. If they don't, then it's up to the discretion to be able to get those results. But that's when it's the most meaningful situation. To get the best results, it's going to be recommended that teachers switch classes and proctor surveys for each other. So somebody across the hall, when you guys are scheduled to give your surveys, it's going to make sense for you to switch classrooms. And this is primarily being done for the purpose of just the student confidentiality and them feeling confident in taking that. So you're going to get a packet at your school that contains proctor instructions for all the schools. You can distribute them. So you'll get this electronically. You can either distribute them to the actual specific teachers and have them give it to the proctors directly if you know who's going to be switching, or you can give it to the teachers and have them figure out the switching of instructions as well as the switching of classrooms. So a couple notes on accommodation. There's guidance for both special education and ELL students is that any testing accommodations that have been a part of it can be used within this, including extended time, read aloud, is basically following those testing accommodations. We also do have an audio function, which I'll show you in just a little bit, that can help with not just students in the combination. It could be all students, younger students, and so forth, but I'll show you in just a second. Some details about it. It's taken online using a web browser. It's compatible with all web browsers. You do need internet access. And each user should have access to their own computer. There'll be a set of instructions that the proctor will read ahead of time that'll tell them how to access it and so forth, and allow them to log on using a specific code for the school and for the teacher. So there's a couple different codes to keep track of. First is there'll be a token. This is a 6-digit number that directs you to the correct survey version. So there'll be a different token for grades K through 2, one for grades 3 through 5, and one for grades 6 through 12. Students choose their school, then schools choose their school from a drop-down menu, and then they'll enter a 3-digit teacher code. And again, I'll walk you through and show you guys this in just one second. So I'm going to walk through what it looks like. Here are the codes, just to note that the spring survey is not live yet. We'll do that once we receive final rosters and a few days before administration is ready to go. So I do want to be able to show you what this looks like in terms of those codes. So you can see here you enter a 6-digit code. I'm going to use the one from Highlands spring pilot last year. So when you enter the actual survey, you'll see that you have a couple notes just at the start. Students will then choose their school. They will then enter a 3-digit teacher code, and they will get a prompt. And by the way, you can see here, this is the audio functionality here, and so you're able to see if you play that right there, you can have the instructions read to them via that microphone. When you've completed both the school and the teacher, it gives you a prompt just to make sure you're choosing the right school and teacher. Then it starts off with a bit of a norming piece right here. So we want to make sure that on our answer choices, people know what we're talking about. So everybody's thinking every class many times, because somebody might have a different definition of often. So we try to have some norming sessions before we go ahead. The student answers whether they understand it. And then we get into our survey. So you can see the questions across the side, answer choices across the top. Students will fill out the survey and go through a few of these different pages. So that's the basics of that piece right there for the survey administration. We have a survey coordinator guidebook that we'll be sending you along with slides that'll walk through every single piece of that if you would like some more information. Okay. So some frequently questions. How long does it take? It generally takes students about 15 to 20 minutes to complete the survey. How many students? So we do not produce reports for teachers with less than 5 students. That's protect student confidentiality. And so we pretty much go through and make sure we would like to have at least 10 to 15 students. That's why we generally opt for having 2 class periods be going for that. And then if it might be that a parent might opt their child out. So if that does happen, if they have that option to do that, just to make sure keeping a list and making sure they are not taking the survey. And feedback reports are returned about 1 week following the end of the survey window. So a couple things. One of the things in your survey coordinator guidebook, you'll have some more information about this. But we have a portal that will allow you to track how many teachers have taken the survey. That'll keep survey results in live time. So what happens is you enter your survey ID, which is just actually your token. You then enter in your school number, and we'll have the school numbers assigned to every single school. We'll try to use their district numbers, but otherwise we will assign some numbers. But if you want to add in a new teacher, that'll give you real-time results. If you want to add in a new teacher, let's say you get your teacher instructions, and for some reason somebody's not on the roster or didn't have a set of instructions, you can create that on your own. You click that Add a New Teacher button, enter in your token. You then will have a drop-down list of school, and you'll enter in their last name, first name, their last name, and their email. Just make sure double-check that those are correct, and click Send. And the teacher will be added to our roster, and it will tell you what their new teacher ID is right here, and you can use that along with the same token for that grade level and so forth. So that's an easy way, and again, this is all spelled out within your survey coordinator guidebook. All right, so some planning guidelines. So trying to think about, well, how many classes do we have take this? What does this actually look like in the school building? For grades 6 through 12, that's middle and high school, you should administer the survey during 2 specified class periods. So what that could look like, you could administer surveys during periods 2 and 3, And the students take the survey about whichever teacher they have during that time period. Now, that means that all teachers will get feedback from 2 of their classes, but it means that a student's not going to take it about every single one of their teachers. We do that very intentionally because we don't, by the 6th time they're taking that survey, you're not going to get as good results. So you're still able to get really accurate results from that sample of 2 class periods. But we don't want to run into survey fatigue. And any teacher that had planning during 2nd and 3rd period, they can have their students take it during 4th period. So we have that backup in place if we need it. For grade teachers, and also, by the way, this situation applies where if it's an elementary school that's departmentalized, you can use this same type of setup for it. For elementary schools, primarily in a homeroom type of setting, the goal is to have each student take the survey 2 times. So all students will take the survey about their homeroom teacher. And then what you'll be able to do is for all the other teachers in the school, the specials teachers and so forth, each student can take the survey about 2 different teachers. So we can kind of assign each class to a certain teacher. So let's say I have 3 5th grade classes. I can have one taken about the music teacher, one taken about the art teacher, and so forth. And then you can go down and say, okay, now I'm going to get my 4th grade classes to take it about these teachers. So you can kind of use each class, they'll take about their homeroom teacher, and they can take it about one other teacher, one of the specialist teachers, so you can make sure everybody gets survey results, but the students, again, aren't getting over-surveyed. All right, so planning worksheet. What we're going to go through in a second, I'm going to give you some time, and feel free to ask either, I'm going to open it up in a conversation mode, and you can also send in questions via chat. But the question you're thinking about is just now let's start doing some planning for your school. When will you have students take the survey about their main classroom teacher? When will you have it take about their specials teachers? When will you have students take about their co-teachers too? And in that situation, let's say that the 4th grade class has a co-teacher. You may have them take it first about their classroom teacher, and then second about their co-teacher. And they might not do an art, music, PE, or so forth. Those are their 2 they do. Similarly, for high school or middle school, it might be that you could either have some students in the class taking about one teacher and others taking about a different one. Or if you need to do it on a different day, to be able to catch some of those co-teachers, maybe you can do it the following week, or maybe you can do it 3 or 4 days later, and they can do it about the co-teacher. And then how will you arrange for teachers to find a partner with whom to switch classes? So it could be, this could be your administration plan. It should be, it could be 8:45 to 9. We distribute proctor instructions to all proctors from main classroom teachers. Students take it about their main homeroom teacher, and after administration, teachers return to their regular classroom because they've switched. Then the coordinator distributes proctor instructions to all the ones for specialist teachers. Maybe that's right afterwards. Students take it about that specialist teacher with whom they've been assigned. And this could be on a different day if needed. So, you've got a 2-week survey window. So it is, that's why we know that you guys are the experts at what's going on in your school and what are the needs of your students. So you're empowered to be able to create this plan using those general guidelines. So for 6 through 12, the questions are thinking about which class periods they're going to have the students take the survey. If they have planning, during what additional period would you administer the survey? How are you going to address co-teachers? And then if they're switching, again, how would you arrange to find a partner? So this might be what a survey administration might look like in grades 6 through 12, is that they might distribute it for all 2nd period teachers. They take it about their 2nd period teacher. Then they could distribute the instructions about their 3rd period, for the 3rd period classrooms. The students take it about their 3rd period teacher. And then during 4th period, surveys for teachers who had planning during either their 2nd or 3rd, just to give you a sense of this is what a survey plan might look like. So we want to give you some time here. We want to give you some time right here to answer some of these questions. Right now, 25. So I'm going to give us a few minutes, about 5 minutes, to start kind of sketching out some of your plans. So we'll come back and join at 2:30. In the meantime, if there are questions, you feel free to ask via chat, and I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to change. So now it has unmuted your lines if you need to ask questions as well, or via chat. So we're going to at 2:30, give you a few minutes to ask some questions, start jotting down some of your initial plans, and it's really helpful to go through and really write some things out so that if you have questions that come up, you can do it while we're here and available to answer questions. So we'll come back in about 5 minutes.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
I actually can, Daryl. I was just about to ask you.
I was trying to talk to Michael Haley. Is he on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the high schools are the one that's going to be tricky because you're still got some EOCs.
Matter of fact, if it's through May 2nd through the 13th, we're booked all the way for those 2 weeks.
Well, I think what we're going to need to do is look in what the afternoons look like, because usually the heavy lifting on the testing is the mornings. So hopefully we can get a little bit of traction in the afternoons, but we will be able to go past the 13th a little bit. So I just wanted to throw that out for especially the high schools, because we are still in testing.
Now, Darryl, is that the same for the elementary?
Billy, what do we got go? What we could go over if we needed to. Yeah, the only thing it'll do is it'll give us, the further we go over, the later we would get the response, the responses back. But we just set a window as a starting point.
Already final diagnostic going. We have our science baseline going.
Yeah, Brenda and I we were basically, there's no good answer because of the time that we took in the January, February timeline reviewing which product we wanted to go with, and then getting quotes back, and then getting the funding back from the Gates Foundation. So that's why we're in the sense. So pretty much all we can do is what we can do, and if we need to go later, it's not going to be a big deal. We were just trying to get something done, get it started, and then you can go later. It just means that the teacher may get it closer to the ending day of June. There may not be a lot of time to talk about what the results look like in those things, if that makes sense to everybody.
Daryl, would we be able to do this during a lab time if they have a lab during specials?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. I'm glad you brought that up, because the elementary can absolutely do that, and you don't have, there's no requirements on who the proctor needs to be, so that anybody can be the proctor.
Okay, it could be a para.
Say it one more time.
Could that proctor be a para?
Absolutely. As anybody that can read the directions, and as long as they're clear with which teacher the survey is about, you're good to go. There's no DOE requirements on certifications, proctor certifications, or any special training or anything like that. So that will give us a little bit more flexibility.
And Daryl, in the instructions that are given out, it has it's a couple times to write the names of the teacher on the board about whom they're taking the survey. And,
right.
And also within the proctor instructions that are read, it has the teacher's name listed twice for the proctor to read.
Perfect.
So just really clear for them to be out who they're actually taking it about.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because I got a little nervous when it said the 3-digit ID, but that's good that it's covered up front. So.
Yep.
But yeah, the elementary are going to be in a little better shape, because they do have the specials going on, and then it gets a little tighter at middle school and all the way up. But Willie, I do understand about the iReady diagnostics and the science. If we need to go past the 13th, from Ryan's standpoint, the survey company's standpoint, they can take the responses on up to June 4th. Right, Ryan? It's just a matter of when we want to get the results back.
What about the K-1-2, adding that on?
That's not going to be a problem. The one thing that is going to be different is it won't make a difference on the students taking the survey. the difference will be when the teachers start looking at results, they'll have a temporary email address because I do have to make that anonymous. I didn't go over it with you guys, but if you'll notice, it is going to be a completely different form. Ryan and his team are going to develop it they're actually going to use our evaluation data and his sets of questions and create something special for K1 and 2 for us.
Okay.
That gets your question, Mike?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So it's going to be a different version of the survey for the younger kids.
Ryan, you want to speak to that a little bit?
So we have the survey version for 6 through 12. There's about 40 questions. For 3 through 5, it's about 24 questions. The survey for K through 2 looks a lot more similar to the 3 through 5 version. The primary difference is that there are fewer answer choices.
Okay.
And a couple of the questions are revised slightly. So on the whole, the K through 2 and the 3 to 5 looks similar, except for answer choices and a couple questions. And then the 6 through 12 has a few more questions.
And we may, as a team, need to talk about the kindergarten, Michael. We may need to, and I'm not excluding Sarah and Pam, I see all you guys on, I really appreciate it. We may need to talk about how to do some data collection for that kindergarten to try to get an accurate result. And that was concern from several of the vendors that, what can we actually do for kindergarten? So we may need to modify the way we collect their data, if that makes sense to everybody. And once we get over this process and we get rostered, and we get all of our schools that can get rolling, we can take a step back and talk about what we can do. I can get some help to you guys to help that kindergarten. Maybe I can get some scripters to come in for the kindergarten. Yeah, I'll talk about all that.
Do you guys have any questions that are coming up in terms of your actually logistics and planning for the survey administration? Okay. Well, this is obviously not the only time as well. So we can come back and answer a couple questions. I did want to make sure that you did see that at the end of this presentation, there's a school survey, a school presentation for you. So these are slides that give some of the basics of what we talked about today. They'll talk about, the why and the student surveys. They'll talk about the screening procedures, which is something that teachers definitely appreciate. Give you an overview of the survey categories as well as look at what some of the items are. Then we'll go over some of that important information that you had, and then that's it. So you'll be able to have access to those slides for you to use. So at this point, that's the primary information. You will be receiving a copy of these slides. We're also going to send you a recording of this webinar for you to be able to use. And then the third piece is that you'll get a survey coordinator guidebook that will answer a lot of information. So at this point, I'm going to stop the recording. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this point.
I saw when you were talking about planning for the different periods, how long the survey was going to take. It looked like about 45 minutes. What about for K through 5? How long is the survey going to take to complete?